Welcome back to the portfolio update for the month of March. Today we'll be covering all the dividend payers. And I'll also talk about which stocks I bought and, if applicable, which ones I sold. We'll take a look at all of that in this video today. So I'd say let's get started. Since purchase, my portfolio has developed as follows. I've already received an unrealized gain of 18,905 euros. Net, that's already at 6,256 euros, and I've realized a loss of 359 euros. So I'd say let's just take a quick look at the top performers. These are still Fresnillo, Orlen, SBM Offshore, AngloGold Ashanti, and Newmont. Exactly. Otherwise, let's just briefly look at everything over time. That is for the given period, March, ultimately. I would say I'll filter everything a bit more precisely so that we have all the data exactly, just to make sure I'm not distorting anything here. Exactly. So from March 1st up to March 31st. We're sorting that right now. So in total, a price gain of 2,599 euros was achieved, meaning an unrealized gain. Total realized gain, 150 euros and 97 cents, and dividends I have received net 648 euros and 38 cents. The performance is time weighted. The base was at 3.72% for this month, so for these 30 or 31 days ultimately, and the returns, well, we're at 2.6%, including dividends. So let's briefly go over what my top mover was during this period. That was Adequaco, with 70% Inquest, 53% APA Corp, 50% Bukit Asar, and 40% Lion del Basel. Those were, so to speak, my top performers during this period. Then let's take another quick look at what ultimately performed the best, and I would also like to mention what performed the worst. I think it's clear to most people that the energy sector performed really, really well during this period. We can also see here that both Dow and the chemical giant performed well. Gela Resources surged massively, up 40% in a short period of time. So yes, let's briefly go through it, I would say. And as you can see, it's really mostly just the energy sector that has risen by almost 20%. In the end, I don't think I need to go into any more detail about that. I think most people are really aware that the energy sector was simply very strong here. But let's also take a look at what didn't perform so well during this period. For example, one of them is Canacol Energy, a coal stock that I would say is simply not profitable at the moment, and that's why it has really taken a massive hit, or rather the dividend has also been suspended. So it's likely that here there will actually be a yes, it's definitely going deeper into the loss zone for me, maybe even with a total loss of 100%. In this case, otherwise AG Gross International Stock and 35% Indonesia Central Asia Metals, Valtera Platinum, B2, Gold Kursan, Shangxi Copper, Anglo Gold, Ashanti, Lufthansa. So you can actually see a bit of a trend with the commodity stocks in the end, or rather, not really. Those related to energy have ultimately collapsed, and Lufthansa as well. There have been a few issues here again. Then Fresnillo, Twax, Baxter International. I think it's clear where things are ultimately heading. And that's basically how things look at the moment, or how they looked during this period. I'll just quickly go back for a moment, just to take a brief look back in time. It might take a little moment to load. And let's just take a quick look at how everything has performed overall in the end. Here with me. And then we'll go straight directly into dividends and also the activities. I don't want to make the video too long, probably around 20 minutes as usual, so you can just see how the overall development really turned out in the end here as well since this year. And then let's take a look at the dividend and also at some purchases and sales. As I just mentioned, it takes a bit to load today. And here we are already exactly. I would say let's just take a look at the largest positions. That's what it is. CMB Tech, for me, currently up 30%. Flex LNG currently down 7%. I already mentioned Tangala Resources, also in LPG, Torm, Equipetrol. Yes, ultimately. All the shipping and energy stocks have really performed very well. Volkswagen is down. Yes, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. I actually bought more Novo Nordisk. Also, because I just think that 31 euros is really a very good price, in my opinion, for the long term. Exactly. Yes. Otherwise, that's how my portfolio is currently developing. And of course, a few dividends have also come in. And with that, I would say, let's just go straight into the activities and finally take a look at what happened in March. In March, there were a total of 132 activities. I bought for 800 euros. I even sold for 738 euros. And a dividend of 648 euros and 37 cents. I'll just briefly touch on buy and sell and then straight to the dividend. So I bought with a small sector, but as for the trust, I sold Intel. Here I ultimately took profits, just like with XBang, and then I did well again with BP. That was a reinvestment from the BP BHP dividend. I also actively bought Scandinavian Tobacco, as you can see here, and otherwise, as a backup, I have Cliff Energy. Here too, I ultimately took good profits. I also sold Hong Kong, China, and gas. Because of the situation over all these years, as I already mentioned, I naturally wanted to reduce my China risk a bit. And only with Nordisk, I actually bought again here. On the 5th of March exactly, so the 5th of March for Shu Hang Fu Sham. Here we can see I received a total of 16 euros and 43 cents in dividends, realized a total of 3 euros and 12 cents, so that's a loss. I even made a loss in this regard. But in any case, I ultimately collected the dividend. Otherwise, let's take a look at Santos. With Santos, I also took a small profit here of only 6 euros and 20 cents. All in all, with everything included. And after deducting fees, it was 10 euros. So nothing major either. But here too, the stock just didn't develop the way I had hoped. Otherwise, Hong Kong, China, and gas with 11%. Here too, only a small amount of 4 euros. Of course, it was only a small position. You have to say that again at this point. Cliff Energy here with 2 euros and 18 cents. And overall, it was 1 euro and 13 cents. And then we have Xpeng. Here I realized a total of 93 euros gross. 81 euros and 25 cents net, which is 130%. And then I also sold Intel when they rallied so strongly, with just under 70%. And yes, I took home a net total of 96 euros and 81 cents here. So those were basically my sales. You've already seen the figures. Then I'd say let's briefly talk about the dividends. What did I receive? Let's quickly take another look at the dividends beforehand. Calendar just to see what ultimately came out here or what was announced. So January, yes, let's quickly check by month. March exactly. So more than 20,820 euros and 71 cents gross were announced. Of course, you always have to keep in mind that some dividends are also slightly adjusted. In the end, especially with Scale or Trade Republic, it can happen that some stocks only come in 5 days later. Then they simply get paid out in April. You have to take that into account in the end. Otherwise, let's take a quick look at the largest positions that paid out. Among them are Bale with 41 euros, UPS with 11 euros and 30 cents, Weisel with 9 euros, Playum Del Basel with 5 euros and 35 cents, then 18 euros, Höchst Autoliners Keynes with 13 euros, then Flex LNG with 54 euros, Dow with 7 euros and 63 cents, Cardinal Energy with 4 euros and 69 cents, 14 euros and 48 cents. Combine and Ore, then we have Frontline with 27 euros and 58 cents, then Petrobras with 13 euros, BWLPG with 65 euros, Valinus Wilhelmsen with 58 euros, Hütt Nordic with 13 euros. So there were quite a few payouts altogether. Tor with 66 euros and 60 cents. And then we have something bigger, BHP with 11 euros, which comes to 37 euros and 38 cents. Then we also have BP with 13 euros and Terra Platinum with 24 euros. I'll just mention those as well. All the amounts over 10 euros are OBO Nordisk with 18 euros. And yes, that's basically it. Then let's briefly jump back to the activities. And here we have March. And you can see here what is always displayed in the package is the gross value. And that's why, for example, I have 28 euros and 11 cents for semi-integrated shipping. Of course, withholding tax is sometimes added to that, or there are also the fees. That's obvious. You can see that here too. That's perfectly clear. It's declared. So I received 28 euros and 11 cents here. 76 cents per share. Then it's still okay. Let's continue because Terra Platinum costs 19 euros in total. And then we have another nice BP here for 12 euros. But Rast with 1877 MPC container chips at 848, 37 euros, 60 at Torben, then 27 euros 50 at Frontline. I don't live there. There are fees everywhere simply because globally maybe even a free protection day was applied. Otherwise, BWLPG with 16 euros 88. Carriers with 4 euros 79, 54 euros, 14 Flex LNG. So there was already a bit coming in here, definitely, which of course is interesting to me. Okay, so where exactly does it apply now and what does it cost for some of the stocks? I can also gladly show you that in a complete separate video if you say yes, if you're interested, because I think it would go a bit beyond the scope here. Somewhere it jumps out of the video, but that's no problem, I can gladly show you. In total, I received a net amount of 687.30 and there were a total of 116 distributions. For the period from March to April, I have already received 113 euros as of now. Of course, we'll go into that next time, but for now, we're interested in buying and selling. I bought more Nordes again, just because of the lower price, in my opinion. Maybe we can take a quick look at that. And I bought Volkswagen again. Why did I buy Volkswagen? Among other reasons, for one particular reason. The dividend is already scheduled for May and has also been announced. And in my opinion, it's absolutely fine for now, of course. The stock will be reduced again before the dividend date, or rather on that day. But for me, that's also fine for now, I would say. Let's first take a look at what dividend we'll receive from Volkswagen. That's currently €5.26, which I think is not a bad amount at all. Ultimately, it is. I mean, the stock is currently trading at around €89. So you might as well collect the dividend. I mean, of course, Volkswagen is definitely in a very bad position right now overall, and the news is also very negative. But in my view, I see this primarily as an entry opportunity for now. Let's see how things develop. My investment horizon is several years anyway, ultimately, and then I can assess the whole situation. But if I say now, okay, if I can make 5% within a month in the end, then I'm happy to take that as well. I know the price will drop again afterwards and all that comes with it. But I have those 5% as cash for now and can then make further decisions with that money. And if I sell early, as I mentioned before, my perspective is actually that I want to hold it for a longer period. And to be honest, I also believe that VW will recover eventually. At least that's my assumption, of course. Other than that, we also have Scandinavian Tobacco. Here too, I bought more shares because, in my opinion, it was simply a cheap entry price. In my view, the dividend growth is definitely on point. As far as I know, it's really truly a segment leader here as well, so to speak. In its field, they focus on cigars that are hand-rolled, so they're actually a leader in that area as well. And at this, let's say, favorable price, I said, okay, sure, I'll buy more. Some people highlight the price. It's really a very good low point. Ultimately, the 52-week high was at €13.66, €8.52, and now it's more like €9.27. The dividend has also been adjusted upward a bit each time, so I'm happy to include this as a defensive sector in my portfolio. And that's why I ultimately made my entry here, and that's why I currently hold a total of €753.33 in Scandinavian Tobacco. Now, let's take another look at Volkswagen. I haven't actually shown you yet how much I have invested in total here. So as you can see, I'm invested with €550.46 in Volkswagen. And otherwise, we can also take a quick look at Novo Nordisk. There, I'm currently invested with €860 and have received a net dividend of €23.75. That's basically the current situation as it stands. I would say, let's take a quick look at what we can expect for the month of April. That will be €320 in distributions. I'll probably start again with the positions around €5 because this time there really isn't that much being paid out. So we have Medical Properties Trust with €17, though to be fair, that's also a very large position. Then we have Blue Owl Capital, Innovative Industrial Properties, BCE, then let's say Cardinal Health, and then also Yankel Australia, then Rio Tinto, and we also have Tungala Resources, Mercedes-Benz is here as well, then CMB Tag. But again, mainly due to the size, as I said, it's more of a growth area now, which I've already discussed with you. Then ING with €5.15, then Austrian Post with €7.32. In my opinion, that's always a really interesting stock. Austrian Post, UPS, DHL, Deutsche Post. Whenever there's a really good entry point, I'm always ready to buy more here as well. This is also simply a defensive stock. Just like pharma or tobacco, for example. Then Eridescent International with €5. That's actually pretty much it already. We can look forward to €320.70 for this period. So I'd say let's take a quick look. Let's just take a look at the largest positions that were paid out in March. That was pretty chip and toss, so let's just briefly look at the general overview. Let's look at the situation. What value did I receive? What dividends did I get? And what was my actual investment in the end? Then we could also take another look at Petrobras. EWP is among the dividend payers and the trust was included as well. Exactly Pickens, but let's leave a few out for now. I know, as I said, we can gladly go into that as well if you're interested, where you can invest and what it costs. By the way, I just noticed that One Jungs is also up by 16%. Let's take a closer look here. So with Die Trust, my entry point was at 71 and right now we're at €6 or €7. It's exactly €6.43. And of course, it's a speculative investment. It's an M rate. You have to see how interest rates ultimately develop. I've already talked about or mentioned that before. So exactly last year we were at €1.18, and as you can see here, you could almost say the dividend was paid, although it was roughly halved. So even if you were expecting a payout of 90 cents, it was still good. That's about 10% in that range. You just have to keep in mind that it's speculative because the value keeps decreasing. So the cash flow from this stock is decreasing as long as interest rates remain high, just like with many other REITs in the end. So, okay. Then exactly €1.18 last year, and this year starting with 26 cents as initial capital or as the first payout. So then we have BWLPG with my position at €8.40. We have now received a dividend of 49 cents in the end, so €41.80. And that was the first dividend in this period. You can also see that it used to be higher. Let's just take a look at the dividend overview here. Last year we had 39 cents and now we've already had 49 cents here. And last year we even had a yield of 10.4 with an entry price of €1.17. Then we can quickly calculate the whole thing. My entry point for this stock is here at €7.14. And then we can finally calculate the yield on cost. And my yield on cost for this stock is 16%, which I receive in 1 year, or rather, which I received as a payout last year. Let's see what happens this year. So otherwise, we also have Petrobras here. And here the dividend is being cut, as you can already see. Here too, more was already paid out in April. And here we can also briefly take another look at the dividends. 5-year dividend growth, 80%. And here a lot has already been announced as well. Each time on April 23rd, so you could practically still take the extract with you if you want. And already in 2026, 26 cents were distributed, so about half. And last year it was 58 cents, which corresponds to 11.23%. So what else do we have? Then we also have here too, as you can see, the dividend was also increased significantly. And in total, I have now received a dividend of €146.30. So let's take a quick look at that. Last year, it was 10.63 with a dividend of €1.77, almost like with BWLPG. So let's also take a quick look here at what the yield on cost is. For this position, my entry price was €15.71. So here I received a slightly better yield on cost last year, namely 11.26%. So let's take a look at how this develops for this year. Then let's get back to Dorian LPG. Here I have already received a dividend of €458.36. And here as well we can see it. In August 2025 there was even a record dividend. Now it goes. The ratio has also ticked up a bit again. Let's also take a quick look at the whole thing here. Last year it was €2.19 and 67 cents. Now for February it was even, let's say, reduced a bit from 67 to 59 cents. That means, depending on how things go, I probably expect around 10% for this year as well. Now, if we take the €2.19 here and calculate it based on my entry price, which was 16.41 euros, the yield on cost for this stock is 13.34%. And that's obviously very nice if you manage to get in at a good price. And that's why I value this so much. And it really makes a difference in the long run if you can get in cheaply with such dividend stocks. Then we also have Flex here, LNG. With Flex LNG, I'm actually in the red now by €147.10. I've already received a dividend of €458.60. My entry price was €26.97. That's actually a relatively high ratio. Last year, the current dividend was at 12% with €2.62. Here too, it was reduced a bit. So I'll base it on this year's dividend of about 11%. Here as well, let's quickly calculate our yield on cost. If you don't want to do this yourself, for whatever reason, you can also feel free to check out my website where I also have all the yield on cost calculators. I've provided calculators there so you can easily calculate it yourself. So my entry, or rather my purchase price, was $26.97. So of course I have a lower yield on cost because I had a worse entry point. And that puts us at 9.7% exactly. That's basically the total value. I'm curious to see how this will ultimately develop for me this year. What I can and would like to quickly say, maybe just for a brief moment, namely that I'm now gradually improving my portfolio dashboard so that it keeps getting better. Ultimately, for me, it's about always having all the data I need, data that is essential and important to me. And that's why I always have my data. So I would say I have everything under control and a complete overview at all times. So that means I can see everything that's happening on the market right here. I can see all the freight shipping rates, basically all the essential data I require as a professional investor. And of course, I want to set all of this up myself, but as I said, I'm always working on it, even now since 9. There is a comprehensive geopolitics tab available here, and let's take a quick detailed look at exactly what is happening within this section. So it functions as a real-time global shipping tracker. I can see precisely what is going on across the world and identify what specific incidents are currently occurring at any given moment. That means I've now built up a really solid data foundation here. I can also actually see all the ship traffic, including all the tankers, so to speak. And I also have a complete set of geopolitical news about what's important and what's happening. And I pull that information in. That means with my complete dashboard, I now have a really, really good setup and a very broad overview, ultimately. And yes, that's why I always have all the latest news, which I can then see. So I know exactly what's happening with important statements as well, as you can see. Yes, I'm currently working on building something additional there for my own knowledge base, so I can get even faster and even better information in the end. And the good thing for you, of course, is that when I do my weekly review, for example, when I do my Sunday review, you actually get this information from me as well, because I use it myself. That means as a result, you also get added value from it. Otherwise, this video series is finished for today for the month of March. I'm looking forward to seeing you when you join me for the next video. Otherwise, I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a like. If you haven't subscribed yet and don't want to miss any more portfolio updates or upstream values at the moment, I'd be happy if you became a subscriber so you don't miss any of my analyses. Otherwise, feel free to sign up for my newsletter. It's completely free. Here too, you'll get a brief summary from the weekly review. You'll also get a bit more in-depth information in the end. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment. I'd also love to hear how your distributions have gone this year or during this period in general. What are your forecasts for the entire year? I'm curious. This year really has gotten off to a very interesting start. Interesting in the sense that, well, it's really very difficult to assess everything right now. Otherwise, I'd say that's about it. I wish you all successful investing. Take care of yourselves and your portfolios. I'm looking forward to the next video if you join me again. Until then.